Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report, coming to you live from Chicago. I don't even know where I am. Washington, D.C. I am not in Chicago. Hey, everybody. How are we doing? I'm still kind of grabbing my stuff here while we talk. All right. Always wait for the comments to get... Well, that's okay. I'm going to assume the comments that you guys are getting the stream today. Let me go live on TikTok. There we go. Adjust my lighting slightly. It's okay. And we'll wait a minute and then we will start. Mirror my video. There we go. Wearing one of my new Singapore shirts today, which might make the comments a little tough to read on TikTok, but what do you do? Occasionally, I get to wear new clothing. Anyway. Hey, TikTokers. How are you all? All right, YouTubers, still waiting to see the comments here. I'm going to hope the YouTubers are live. They should be live. All right, hey, YouTubers. I'm guessing you're hearing me, hopefully. And TikTokers, how's everybody today? Are we good? We having a... Thank you, Mike. Okay, so I am live. That's good. Yes, I'm wearing one of my other new Singapore shirt. So this one has flowers and birds on it. Again, kind of fun. I thought it was fun. Anyway, good evening, Denise. Hey, Carly. Thanks, Jen. So yeah, welcome everybody. You know the way the show works. I go about half hour-ish, maybe more, talking about the latest news from Ukraine, and then second half of the show, take your questions. Thank you, Jen, for the gift. But as always, we'll wait a minute. Andre in Quebec, nice. My volume is up. Good. Maybe do the check-in. I always like when people say where they're coming from. I always think it's interesting. 5x5, excellent. Poskaren. Ooh, or Poskaren. Your name is interesting on YouTube. I'm trying to figure out if it's like a real name or if it's a pen name, or you know what I mean? Like, because it's an interesting name. I've never seen that before. Poskaren. No idea. Interesting name. Anyway, welcome all. Yeah, hey, Big Hawk. You're in Simferopol. That's interesting. Chile. Wow. Minnetonka. I've always liked that name. Oh, anyway, welcome everybody. So, thank you, Macabre. So, kind of fun. Callum was just here. He's visiting town. He surprised me. So he just, thank you, Succeed, for the gifts. Thank you, John S. And Macabre. So yeah, Callum just surprised me. He just was at the zoo like 15 minutes away. So just popped by, which was very nice. So thank you, Martin. So that was fun. So had a little visit. So thank you, Marie. But I kicked him out like 10 minutes ago because I was like, okay, the show's starting. Get out of here. Thank you, user 716, for the glasses. Your dad's house watching the dogs. Nice. Now, is this not the wildest gift? What Christopher just bought. There's a new gift on TikTok that has like an animal pinching your cheeks, but literally, thank you, Derek, for the gift. It literally, like, you see the cheeks get pinched. It's the craziest thing. Somebody had gotten it yesterday, and I was like, holy cow. It's pretty cool. Anyway, oh yeah, Paskarin. It's okay. You're putting a flag up there. Blue and yellow, I'm going to go with Sweden, because I remember Sweden has the same flag as Ukraine, or same colors as Ukraine. Interesting name, though. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the name. Anyway, and Eric Nordstrom, very Swedish name there. Hey, Gothenburg, we've got a number of you guys from Sweden today. That's good. And Jens, who's often here, is Swedish as well. We've got our Swedish contingent is much... is it Finland? No. Is Finland blue and yellow too? I don't know. Isn't Finnish? I thought Finnish was white and blue. Now, don't get me on European flags. I am so bad at European flags. But, see, for example, Grom, who says hello from and has a white flag with blue, I have no idea where that's from. Thank you, Kevin. Where's that from, Grom? Or is that Finland? The white background with the blue cross. Is that Finland? That's Finland. Okay. And then Norway I often remember. Sweden I remember because of it being the same colors as Ukraine. Finland is white. Okay, that makes sense. Yep. No, it's very difficult because, like, you know, you guys, I found this, like, Europeans love to refer to their country with the flag, and it drives me bonkers because as an American, we don't know any flags. Blue and white like Greece, that I know, but we don't know the flags. So, like, who was it that, what's his name? He hasn't been in a while, but he's our wonderful law student from the UK. who checks in every once in a while. Oh my God, I'm forgetting his name. Young guy, but he would always throw the hard questions at me on YouTube. And remember, he liked to throw flags in with his question. And he wouldn't name the country. He would give me the flag, and I'd always be like, I don't know the damn flag. Oh, so Callum, yes, Callum is not joining us today because he was visiting me in person. So Callum is now off running around with his friend, but he will not be joining us tonight for that reason. But it was very nice to see him in person. He's actually Harvey. Thank you, Amanda. That's it. It's Harvey. I was going to say, I'm like forgetting his name because I don't see Harvey enough anymore. But yeah, Harvey would love to throw hard questions at me. He'd love to reference British officials like by a name that I don't know, like a name of a person. I'm like, who is that? Or European officials. And he loved to throw flags at me. That was like a Harvey specialty. See, Babolind, that one I don't, although that one looks familiar too. Could that be Baltic maybe? Babolind has like white, black, and blue. Which one's that? And Mike C., thank you very much for the gift from Canada. Is that Estonia? Okay, I was gonna say I was thinking it was one of the Baltics. See, I'm getting better. Isn't the pinch face like too funny? It's really cute. Thanks, Elizabeth. All right, guys. I will get rolling here. So thank you, everybody. Welcome. You know the way the show works. Anybody who's new, I go through the news from Ukraine for like the first half hour, maybe a little bit longer, and then second half of the show, take your guys' questions, your comments. Sometimes during the show, I will also kind of glance and see your questions. But the first half of the show, I have like the news that I've culled that I think is the important news to share today. So when I'm reading that, I'm not always seeing your questions. So just be aware. But thank you for joining us, guys. Thank you in advance for your gifts. I always tell people I do this for a living. So it is very helpful to me when you guys buy the gifts because they help pay my bills because nobody else pays my bills. So thank you for that. Let me get rolling here. So today is day 813 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation in Europe. Thank you, Elizabeth. Isn't it just, I just think it's the wildest gift. And thank you, Alan, as well. Tomorrow's our coffee talk. So remember, guys, on TikTok and YouTube. Also, it'll be on Discord as well. But I do a Saturday hangout for the paid monthly subscribers. So on TikTok, that's all of you who have got SNN next to your name. On YouTube, it's all of you in green. And then also Discord, and the rest of you too can come in via Discord. And it is basically a hangout I do for you guys to thank you for being monthly subscribers. Vlad usually joins us from Ukraine. It's not a guarantee. But he usually joins us from Ukraine. So we get kind of an interesting, the week that was update from Vlad on whether things are better or worse or whatever. And it's also just a nice chance for us to hang out because it's a smaller audience. So I'm able to act, and I don't have a prepared script for that stuff. So I'm able to kind of sit here and, have a real conversation with you guys. So anyway, join us tomorrow morning if you are a monthly subscriber. And if you're not, consider becoming a monthly subscriber. The mods can tell you on TikTok or Ukraine how to do that. Does Ukraine have enough artillery shells now? No, they do not. It's not the thing. A couple things that are hard to know. Actually, thank you, Cheryl. Isn't it just goofy? I love the gift. It is not clear if and when Ukraine will have. Thanks, Elizabeth. Will have sufficient artillery shells because there just aren't any. The Russians have produced a lot of them. They produce a lot more than we do. The Russians also got a lot of them from North Korea. A lot of them don't work, but still, they got a ton. So even the ones that do work help. The Czech government went and found about 1.5 million shells from all over the world. So that's a big deal. But 1.5 million doesn't really help, right? It helps, but it's not enough. Like 1.5 million. I'm forgetting how many months 1.5 million would do. The coffee talk is 11 a.m. Eastern time, US. Thank you, Marie. So no, they do not have enough artillery shells yet. It's not clear if they ever will have enough artillery shells. Thank you, user, who is it, 716? But when the Czech shells start to arrive next month, the first shipment of shells that the Czech Republic was able to find, a lot of European countries have pitched in to buy them. That will at least help. But honestly, and this is kind of a weird thing. Thank you, not Vika. We sort of discovered that we're not really ready for a war with Russia. And to some degree, it's not surprising, I guess. Thank you, Taylor. Because pre-Ukraine, a lot of people thought that, well, I mean, in the last several years, we got increasingly worried about Russia, but nobody thought Russia was a threat. In the American presidential elections in 2012, the Republican running against President Obama, thank you, Crystals, for the gift, running against President Obama, Mitt Romney said that our greatest geostrategic enemy or whatever was Russia. And everybody laughed at him. I mean, he was literally laughed at. People were like, what do you think this is, 1985, right? After the Cold War ended, after the Soviet Union dissolved, people did not think Russia was going to be a threat anymore. And the Europeans and the Americans both didn't produce as many weapons as we would have before to prepare for a land war in Europe. Nobody thought we were going to have a land war in Europe anymore. The Germans, I was told that the Germans during the Cold War might have had like 2,000 tanks or something. And now the Germans have like 200. I mean, like it was a crazy number because they weren't preparing for a Russian invasion anymore. So part of the problem becomes artillery shells. You know, we weren't preparing for an artillery war. And all of a sudden now we've got one. So I'm not sure when we're going to get to the point where Ukraine has enough shells. I did see this, Kevin. Kevin Quick just mentioned something on TikTok. You know, I Googled it right before the show and I didn't see the story. Supposedly it was in the Washington Post and I couldn't find it because I get the Post online. So of course it's always hard to find stuff online. You know what I mean? Like the real paper, you can find stuff. Thank you, Oxygen, for the tiny diny. But some report about Ukrainians losing their connection to Starlink when it was most needed in a recent battle. So kind of scary, very scary. But no, anyway, it's an issue. So yeah, so tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time, US, is the coffee talk with the paid subscribers. Join us, and if you're not a paid subscriber, considering becoming one, thank you, Lotus. It's the monthly subscribers who help me out. Also, remember you can buy a monthly. Oh, Yulia is with us today. Hey. If you're around in a bit, I don't mind grabbing you and doing an update. We forgot to check in by text. I forgot about that. We were going to text to figure it out. But I don't mean to make you like hang out or anything. But let me go through some of the news first. And then depending on, I mean, if Yulia's got time, we can grab her to maybe give us an update on what she's been hearing out of Ukraine and everything. So let me try to go through some of the news here, guys. So the Slovak Prime Minister, thank you, Steve Paul. The Slovak Prime Minister underwent a second surgery. Remember, there was an assassination attempt against him earlier this week. He is still not out of the woods. He's still not doing well. Second surgery today and still in serious condition. The government is being very tight-lipped, other than the Interior Ministry saying the guy was like a lone gunman that attacked him. Otherwise, they're being very quiet about it. President Putin, so Putin is in China this week, meeting with the Chinese premier, Xi, and of course, you know, the Chinese and the Russians are like this. The Chinese like to pretend they're independent. They're not. The Chinese are helping the Russians in this war. And Putin talked today about how he wants to promote, He wants negotiations. He called for peace negotiations. And I thought this was very interesting. The Institute for the Study of War weighed in, and they're a very good defense think tank here in Washington, D.C. And they've weighed in previously and said that Putin continues to use calls for peace negotiations to feign interest in negotiations. So basically, he's faking it. He's not interested in negotiations. He's trying to undermine Western support. So the idea is to basically have Americans especially look and go, and maybe Germans too, look and go, oh, look, the Russians want peace. Maybe we shouldn't be sending as many weapons, this kind of stuff, right? The other issue, and this was a little bit of a contradiction though, ISW, Institute for Study of War, was saying that the Russians also hope the West will force Ukraine into negotiations with Russia. Thank you for that. Who was that? Alan, thank you. The West is hoping Moscow is hoping the West will force Ukraine into negotiations with Russia that make concessions on Ukrainian sovereignty. So there is a little bit of a truth to it that the Russians might want peace negotiations, but the reason the Russians want peace negotiations is they want to basically make Ukraine cave and say, yeah, all that land you just took, you can keep it. So, you know, a little bit of a gamesmanship here. Thank you, Crystals, for the rose. And I just saw Michael. Thank you, Michael Jarvis, for subscribing. Very nice of you. Tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern. Join us. If you're around and you remember, just come to TikTok at 11 a.m. Like I said, it's a nice hangout. People enjoy it. We hang out. It's much more casual. Vlad often joins us from Ukraine. It's a good crowd. Thank you, Ulina, with the hand hearts. So, okay, some Ukrainian attacks, some some successful Ukrainian attacks against Russia in the last day. There was an attack that caused a fire at an oil refinery in Krasnodar, Russia. Apparently, according to Reuters, the attack forced an emergency shutdown at the facility. The drones hit the liquefied petroleum gas production unit, while it produces naphtha, fuel oil, vacuum gas oil, and high sulfur diesel supplies for Turkey, China, Malaysia, and Singapore. Also, a Ukrainian drone hit another oil terminal this morning, Russian, in Novorossiysk. And anyway, the Ukrainians are obviously still continuing to go after the Russian energy, which is good. And Johan just subscribed as well. Thank you for that. Or maybe Yuan, depending how you pronounce your name. I've learned my Swedish friends, in English we say Johan like the Germans. But then I remember years ago meeting a Swede, and his name was a Swedish friend of mine, Yuan. I remember like Yuan. It's like, oh my God. But now I'm going to guess, okay, is that the Danish flag maybe? Because we know it's not Norwegian and I know it's not Swedish. So I'm going to go with Danish maybe. Let me know if that's Danish. Just curious. In any case, Sky News, what was this? Oh yeah, there was also a Ukrainian attack on Crimea, which is interesting. Thank you, Grom, for the gift. Sky News says new satellite imagery appears to show damage at the Belbek Air Base in Russian-occupied Crimea. That's good too. So, I mean, you know, the thing is, oh, did you gift a subscription, Jane? I didn't see. Thank you if that was you that did that. Oh, for you, Alina. Okay, nice. Okay, thank you. Glad you did. Thank you for doing that. It doesn't always show me, I think, like who's gifting stuff. Anyway, thank you if that's what happened. I appreciate that. Oh yeah, new poll of Russians. So this is kind of, you know, annoying but sad, but I guess what do you do? Oh, you bought yours. Okay, thank you, Elena. Either way, I mean, thank you, because obviously I can thank you directly for that. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, do join us tomorrow if you got time, 11 a.m. 11 a.m. Eastern, I should say, Washington, D.C. time, New York time. So a new poll of Russians. Most Russians would, listen to this, most Russians would support an end to the war if they get to keep all the new territories they stole from Ukraine. Otherwise, not so supportive. This is a poll done by the Levada Center, which is a very respected, I would say they seem to be the most respected Russian pollster. You know, so as far as polls go in Russia. And thank you, who's that, Grom? Thank you for subscribing as well. And they found that 71% of Russians would back an end to the war this week. But the number drops to 30% if the conditions for peace were to return the territories Russia has stolen from Ukraine. So there. Since September last year, the level of support for the Russian army has stayed at about 75%. With older respondents more likely to remain in favor. Putin's approval rating appears to be at 82%. You know, again, I'm having a very difficult time feeling any sympathy for the Russian people. Honestly, reminds me of when Americans voted for Trump, and frankly, half of Americans supporting Trump again. If you're going to have that many people in the country support the guy, then you're responsible for what he does. You know? I mean, if the Russians support Putin to this degree at this point, the Russians can't say, oh, they're nice people. He's a dictator. He commits war crimes left and right, but they're nice people. They're not nice people if they vote for the guy and still support him. You know, and like I said, same thing goes for Trump. Same thing goes for anybody like that. If you're going to support people that are that bad politically and that corrupt and that anti-democratic as far as opposing democracy and criminals, then, you know, you're not a good person. And Israel's much easier because Israel's complicated. Palestinians have been murdering people for 75 years, and the Israelis have been blowing people up for 75 years as well. Much more complicated situation. And, you know, there you go. Yeah, there's literally nothing that's the same with Biden. Biden didn't commit crimes. Biden didn't try to violently overthrow our democracy. Biden didn't let an epidemic run rampant and deny it. Biden didn't let his children get billions of dollars from the Saudis, get patents from the Chinese. Like, I could go on. Actually, no, he didn't. The funny part with I don't want to get into the Biden stuff, but what's interesting about it is the Republicans literally have kind of given up on impeaching Biden. They admitted they have no evidence. And by the way, Google it if you're like some Trump Republican that supports and believes this crazy stuff about Biden. Ask yourself why the Republicans haven't impeached Biden. They've tried. Democrats have literally brought up the impeachment and said, okay, let's do it. Let's impeach him. And the Republicans are going, nope. And they admit, the Republicans, Google it, the Republicans have admitted they don't actually have any proof that Biden did anything. He didn't do any crimes. Biden's big sin is Biden's old. It's the one criticism of Biden that's true. The guy is older than dirt, and he is. But corruption? No. Corrupt children? His son's I can't stand Biden's son, but Biden's had nothing to do with his son. Donald Trump, on the other hand, Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, $2 billion with a B from the Saudi government. $2 billion, okay? Right? His daughter, Trump becomes president, suddenly the patents his daughter was waiting on, I think their patents are copyright, I forget, trademark, in China, she suddenly gets them when Trump becomes president. Yeah, so, and then of course we have Trump trying to violently overthrow the government. That little thing Trump did where he tried to have a coup, right? And got several cops murdered and threatened to kill the vice president of the United States. His people did. When they took over, they were going to lynch the vice president. So don't even try. I am like, okay if people don't like Biden, right? Or Trump for that matter, but you better have a real reason. And you better not spout, Fox News, Newsmax, crazy talking points. That's the one thing I draw the line on in any of the debates I have, whether it's Israel or anything else. I don't mind people disagreeing. Thank you, Don. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, that's really cool, Don. I don't even know that I've seen that one before. That was cool. That was like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. That was cool. But I don't like people who basically follow conspiracy talking points. All Republicans are bad. All Democrats are bad, right? I mean, that's just, come on. That's just stupid. Those kind of people I can't even argue with because they're brainwashed. They're cultists, But exactly, feel free not to like Biden, but don't give me some bullshit about how corrupt he is. The guy's a saint. Frankly, he's too much of a saint. If he was a little more corrupt, he might be harder on Russia. He's just old. And he's a little milquetoast, to be honest, too. Anyway, the Russian foreign ministry is bluffing again. So the Russians, this is actually interesting. This is interesting. Thank you, Jennifer. Very glad to hear it. Appreciate you saying that on YouTube. Thank you, Papi Chulo. Appreciate that. The Russian foreign ministry is going crazy again against the Brits and the Americans. And this is very interesting because they're bluffing again, war, this kind of crap. Like, we're going to go to war with the Americans and the Brits. What's interesting to me isn't that they're saying it because they say it all the time. It's just stupid. But oh yeah, well actually that's very funny. Andrioka just asked about Biden's Me Too accuser. Yeah, so we'll finish this discussion. So Biden gets accused by this crazy woman who is reported to be a serial con artist. There's a big article about her. And the woman claimed like he was too friendly to me 30 years ago in the Senate. She's a total con artist. This article about her was horrific. I mean, this woman is a serial scam artist. Guess where she is right now? She defected to Russia because she wasn't safe in America. Okay? That's who the Biden accuser was. She's a nut job. She's an absolute freaking nut job. So, yeah, defecting to Russia. Okay? So that is like the last. You can say many things about Biden. One of the last things you could really accuse him of is that kooky, I'm forgetting her name, the kooky woman's name. Blistering article, I think it was Politico, or Rolling Stone, I'm forgetting an article about the woman. Oh my God. She was just absolutely, yeah, anyway. But like I said, defected to Moscow. Tara Reid, there you go. Defected to Moscow. Okay. Okay. So anyway, the Russians. So the Russian government's up to something. And I'm always fascinated. I don't care about their bluffs. I don't care about their war bluffs. Thank you. Who's that? Moi. They bluff all the time, right? I don't care. Thank you, Mysterioso, for the subscription. They're always threatening war. I just don't care, like I said, because it's a lie. It's always a lie with Russia. But what's interesting to me is when they do it and why they do it. Thank you, Ellie, or Eli, or Ellie. I think you're Ellie, with the face pinch, and Mary for the rose. I'm always intrigued at when they do it, because right now you've got the Russians trying to trump up war again, like, oh my God, with the Brits and the Americans. But you've got the Russian foreign ministry doing it and a top Russian ambassador both doing it, which means it's part of a plot, basically. Thank you, user 716 and Ellie again. It's a plot. It is clearly high levels of Putin, basically high levels of the Russian government that have said, somebody said to Putin, okay, it's time again we tried to scare Biden and the Germans into fearing war with us. And for whatever reason, probably Biden and the Germans, they could be going after somebody else too. But clearly this is a high level decision by Putin to try to freak somebody in the West out. Listen to what they did, okay? This is from the Russian Foreign Ministry. Listen, I mean, guys, we're 2.5 years into the war. This is such BS from them. It's kind of funny. Once again, we should like to unequivocally warn Washington. Mind you, once again, yeah, it is once again because you've been unequivocally warning us for 2.5 years. I got news for you guys. If a country is threatening for 2.5 years to nuke you, they're not going to nuke you. Bottom line, they're not. If they're threatening for 2.5 years to go to war with you, they're not going to go to war. The guy who's threatening for 2.5 years to hurt you isn't going to hurt you. Like, I mean, at this point, right? Like, you know, but I bring this up because what's interesting about it is, as I said, it says that there's something going on at the senior levels of the Russian government where Putin feels the need to scare us again and basically go after the Americans and the Brits. So listen to this. Once again, we should like to unequivocally warn Washington, London, Brussels, and other Western capitals, as well as Kyiv, which is under their control, that they are playing with fire. Russia will not leave such encroachments on its territory unanswered, except you have left it unanswered for 1.5 years. Okay, we're 900 days practically into this war, or 810, I think I said. Thank you, Ava, for the gifts and for sharing the live, right? We're 810 days into this war. For 810 days, you've been saying, we will not let your support of Ukraine go unanswered, but you have been letting it go unanswered for 800 days. It's been 2.5 years practically that the Russians have done nothing to stop us from helping Ukraine, and they've done nothing bad in response to us helping Ukraine. It's total BS. And I mean, the thing is, it shocks me to some degree because, honestly, it makes them look weaker. At least if Russia didn't say anything, you know, you might wonder about what the Russians are doing, right, to respond to the fact that we're supporting Ukraine. But going public and saying, I'm going to tell you again for the 150th time in 3 years that if you keep helping them, oh boy, I'm going to get mad. It makes you look weak. Anyway, there's a little bit more. Earlier today, Russia's ambassador to Britain says something similar. He says that Britain is a de facto participant in the war in Ukraine, which of course is like, no shit, Sherlock. He says it's because the Brits have supplied Kyiv with weapons and real-time intelligence. He says the same about the U.S. This is now the British ambassador to the UK. The U.S. is playing with fire. Well, we've been playing with fire for 2.5 years, and you've done nothing about it. Over its indirect war with Russia. And then the Russian deputy foreign minister, the third senior Russian official in the last 24 hours, says, we warn that the Brits and the Americans are playing with fire. They have long been in an indirect war with the Russian Federation. What made me laugh about this, Michael Clark, who's a very good British defense expert, I think he's a university professor maybe, but he's a British defense expert. He's on Sky News a lot. Clark steps in response to this and goes, that this is the truest thing he said, the British ambassador, the Russian ambassador to Britain. He says, the British government has made it very clear we're helping the Ukrainians with intelligence. And where appropriate, we've done it with our aerial intelligence. He goes, so the Russian ambassador is telling me something I've known for about the last 2 and a bit years. That's the thing. I have said this from the beginning. When people say it's a proxy war, I always go, yeah. I mean, hell yeah. Yeah. Are we fighting the Russians? Of course we are. This is what you do. You don't go to war directly. And actually, Emil raises a good point on YouTube. Thank you, Danan. The Russians did it in Vietnam. Thank you, Doughboy, for the gifts. The Russians in Vietnam, among other things, sold, as I recall, fighter jets to the North Vietnamese that used them to kill American pilots. Like, this is not new. And of course we're at war. We're not at war, but this is how wars work. Right? Especially among great powers. You kind of fight each other at the edge via proxies. And by a proxy, it literally means you get someone else to fight your war. So Ukraine would be our proxy. They're the person we tag and say, okay, you're it. Go fight them, and we'll help you. That's what it is. So of course we're in a proxy war with Russia. Of course we are. But it kind of makes me laugh because, thank you, Danan, the Russians like to claim it. And at the same time, I just kind of feel like, just admit it. Like, why don't we say sure? Now, again, part of this is also Biden. I think a Republican, well, Trump wouldn't. Trump would literally be like, Russia, let me marry you. But normal Republicans before Trump would have been like, yeah, we're fighting a war with you. Go away. And you better hope it doesn't turn into a bigger war, you know? Yeah, I don't do a recap this early. I do the recap at the end of the show, Storm. At the very end, right before I sign off, I do the recap just to sort of tell people what we talked about. Yeah. Right now, I'm still sort of talking about the latest news. In any case, it just kind of makes me chuckle because they're so weak, and they come across weak when they do stuff like this. You know, you better not keep supplying Ukraine. We're going to hurt you. It's like, okay, after 2.5 years, you're not going to hurt us. More Russian war crimes. In Ukraine, Institute for Study of War says Russia has shown no indication of trying to restrain its forces from brutally victimizing Ukrainian civilians and committing war crimes. And that basically it's been summarily executing and detaining civilians in Ukraine. We've known this, but it's interesting for a big defense think tank to come out and basically say, listen to this quote, Russian military massacres like the massacres in Bucha and Izium are a microcosm of Russian atrocities throughout the Russian-occupied territories. Thank you, Marge. Now, and Christopher for the rose. One final point ISW made was basically, this is the kind of thing you need to worry about. Thank you, Al, for the donut. With Russia taking over the Ukrainian territories. The territories Russia's already stolen from Ukraine, but also, thank you, Crystals, for the rose, any territories Russia may get in the future, but also if we, the Ukrainians, decide to give away any of these territories to Russia for good, they're dooming everybody who lives there to torture and murder. I mean, it's what the Russians have done. It's what Institute for Study of War has said. It's not great. This is what they do. You know, actually, listen to the quote from Institute for Study of War. Russian attempts to seize major population centers like Kharkiv do not just threaten Ukraine with operationally significant setbacks, but also with war crimes and violations that accompany Russian occupation. In other words, when the Ukrainians lose this land to Russia, it's not just a strategic loss. It's not just a loss for the Ukrainian economy or the Ukrainian soul. The people living there are now having to live under a criminal government that commits war crimes left and right and detains and kills civilians. So it's bigger problems with saying, why don't we just all agree, to let the Russians keep some of the land. European Union has suspended 4 more Russian propaganda outlets. And then finally, you know what? Final point here. This is good. We are ending early. If Yulia's still here, I'll grab her next. Georgia, the former Russian, former part of the Soviet Union. Georgia, free and independent country. The government there, pro-Russian, they're trying to pass, they claim to be pro-NATO and pro-EU. They're not. They're trying to pass a Russian-style law that Putin came up with, actually, to quelch dissent in the country. And basically, it says anybody that receives more than 20% of funding from abroad, you could be a newspaper, you could be a women's rights group, an LGBT rights group, pro-democracy group. If you get more than 20% of your money from abroad, you now have to declare yourself as a foreign agent, basically meaning a spy for a foreign government. And one of our trolls yesterday brought it up and said, oh, the U.S. has a law like that. No, we don't. And I decided to look into it. So the U.S. law, and you can Google this, the U.S. law says anybody who is funded by a foreign government, okay, and is told what to say by the foreign government has to declare that. So that, for example, all the Russian news agencies, they're not independent news agencies. They either work directly for the Russian government. Oh, okay, something by text. Okay, that's fine. Oh, she's in Ukraine. I forgot about that. Thank you, Amanda. I keep forgetting Julia's in Ukraine. I'm thinking she's in New York. Yeah, it's midnight out there or 1 a.m. So yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to make her, I wasn't thinking of making her wait. But usually when I get her on, we stay on. So I prefer to have her on the second half of the show. Okay, we'll get her another day. Thanks, Amanda. So Georgia, yeah. So the U.S. law is quite literally, if you are hired by a foreign government and the foreign government tells you what to say, you have to declare that. The Russian law and the Georgian law says if you get any money from abroad, if you get 20% of your money from abroad, you have to declare yourself as an agent of a foreign government. Kind of a difference, right? Kind of a difference. One is basically you're working as a lobbyist for a government. The other one is any money you get from abroad at all makes you a spy, is what the Georgian money says. Now, final point here is we were sort of just mentioning the reason the Georgians need money is because they're not a rich country. Typically, and I mean, America as well, you don't get rich running newspapers. You don't get rich running children's rights groups, women's rights groups, LGBT rights groups. You just don't get running pro-democracy groups. If anything, you get killed and get thrown in jail. You don't get rich. There's not a lot of money there. That's the first problem. The second, so it's hard for these groups to finance themselves. Second of all, there aren't a lot of people to help. I mean, Georgia's not a rich country. It's not a huge country. The population can't sustain independent press. They can't sustain a lot of the human rights groups, civil rights groups, right? That's why they have to get money from abroad. But they don't. I mean, they get some from foreign governments, but it's independent aid packages. And by the way, the U.S. doesn't tell you what to say, right? But any case, that's the deal. It's obnoxious, but in any case, the Russians. All right, that is it for now. We do have a number of auction items. Remember, I won't go through all of them right now. Thank you, Martin. But dog wants to come in. All right, dog, come on in. But remember, we've got a lot of really cool auction items over at Discord that benefit Ukraine. Half of the money from our auctions goes to Ukraine. Half of the money goes to support my work because I do this for free and I do it full time, as I tell you guys. So it literally helps me pay the bills because nobody else does. I won't show you everything today, but remember, we've got a really cool Ukrainian military patch. This is the second most popular patch. The most popular is the Ukrainian flag. This patch, although it comes in many colors, with the Ukrainian trident, is the second most popular patch. Thank you, Bryce. But there's many versions of it. So this is a camouflage one in black, of course. Very cool Ukrainian coffee mug. I think Jens may be the top bidder on this so far. But a cool Ukrainian coffee mug that Vlad got in Ukraine with the Vyshyvanka design. Also very popular. Like I said, I won't show you too much. This one's really popular. This is the Ghost of Kyiv commemorative coin. It's called a challenge coin by military folks. And basically, it is a commemorative coin for a Ukrainian fighter pilot that was called the Ghost of Kyiv, who they believe they know who he was. I'm forgetting the name now, but he was shot down a ton of Russian planes, and then was he himself shot down and killed. No, actually, it was the Ghost of Kyiv, that guy who was doing a lot of... Remember, there was one guy who was really good, who did a lot of publicity for the Ukrainians and then was killed. It was really sad. Like he was really good with the press. He'd gone to Washington to help lobby. And I don't remember if he was the Ghost of Kyiv. He might have been. And if anybody remembers, I'm forgetting the guy's name. Only because I like to reference people's names if they're kind of heroes, But in any case, that's kind of nice. And there's a lot of other stuff. I won't show you everything now. But there's a lot of other cool stuff we've got. Go check it out. Oh, Mando, we have a Russian troll. Go get him, Manda. Yeah, that guy just gets blocked. Well, the thing is, Ghost of Kyiv could be multiple people. It could be apocryphal. I mean, the Ukrainians will tell you it's real. Now, what's absolutely real is the number of Russian pilots who were shot down and killed, and had their planes destroyed. That's real by the Ukrainians. But could have been one person, could have been three people, But it's still a good story. Anyway, all right, guys. Let's chat. We'll do our hangout. So questions, comments, you name it. The troll has left the building. Biden does need to fire a blink. Blinking isn't really the problem. Whoa. Jay Sco. That is very cool. That was really cool, the Interstellar. I've never seen that one before. Wow. That was really cool. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. I don't know if there's any news about Iran and Israel at this point. That was very cool. Thank you. Actually, you know what TikTok does now? TikTok gives me the ability to now thank people with clips and stuff for the gifts. So like after the show, it shows me the 3 top gifts that people did and gives me the clip so I can simply share them. So on TikTok, any of you, I can't promise all of you because literally it's like an hour and a half show. So thank God it goes and grabs me stuff because it's too hard for me to find it. It's hard for me to even access the show after the show. I've got to download this. It's horrible. TikTok's bad for this. But nonetheless, that one, they should have a couple of the gifts today. They should let me post. So go check it out. In any case, thank you, Alex, for the rose. And Everton Thompson. Make sure I didn't forget anybody else here. And Jasko with the cool Interstellar. That was very cool. Thank you, Jasko. Anyway. All right. Annette with the troll. Exactly. Or the goat. I mean, exactly. Thank you, our Ginger, for the hat. Thank you, Timothy. Nikita, the problem is you think it's embarrassing to people. We have another Russian troll. Actually, could be a Serbian troll, too. A lot of them are Serbians, too. Who's like, Biden's the real president of Ukraine. And it's like, thank you, Alex, for the gifts there. And I always laugh because it's again, this is where the Russians show their weakness. You're suggesting that the U.S. has a lot of influence with Ukraine because we've been giving them a lot of weapons and helping them support themselves, right? Like, yeah. That's good. Like, I'm proud of the fact, and I think the Ukrainians are proud of the fact that the Americans are standing by them and they'd like us to stand by them even more. So like, but a troll's like, Biden's in bed with the Ukrainian government. And you're like, yeah. Again, like, no shit, Sherlock, right? Well, Everton, I think you just gave a gift. That's why I thanked you. I think so, wasn't it? No, I'm already forgetting. I'm pretty sure you just gave a gift. Yeah, I'm happy to say your name. Well, I try to call out the people that do the bigger gifts because the little ones, there's so many that it's like hundreds of them. It's not possible. But for the big ones, thank you, Norway. Thank you, G-Dub, and thank you, Chazak. But I do try to do shout-outs when I see the gifts, at least, if I can. So thank you, guys. Oh, did another troll come back? Uh-oh. Oh, he did come back. Manda, go get him. Go get him. I love when they get so upset. The Russian trolls get very upset by the fact that the Ukrainians have killed a lot of Russian fighter pilots. It's got to be pretty embarrassing, you know, when a little country like Ukraine kicks your ass. So embarrassing. Hey, Pane Kiri, or Kirilo is probably your first name, I'm going to guess, because that looks like Cyril or Kirill. Good to see you. You still believe Russia can attack a NATO country? Yes, but Russia's only going to do it if they think they can get away with it. That's the concern. Is Trump going to let Russia get away with attacking a NATO country? Very possibly. He's already said so. Is Biden? No. Would Republicans in Congress let Russia get away with attacking a NATO country? I think so. Yeah. Right? Why wouldn't they? You think MAGA Republicans in Congress are going to defend Estonia? Right? I mean, for that matter, you think they'd defend Slovakia? Like, not that Putin's going after Slovakia, but there's no way in hell MAGA Republicans are going to go to war with Russia over Slovakia. They're not going to do it for the Baltic countries. They're not going to do it for anybody. Poland, they might have to because we've got a large Polish community in America. But beyond that, good luck. You know? Anyway. But yeah, so there is a concern of Russia. Now, again, what Russia might do, I talked about this the other day. Russia could go after the Suwalki Gap, which is this little area of land connecting Belarus to Kaliningrad, which is a Russian territory in Europe. And they could go after that and grab a small piece of land that's super strategic, but grab the land and say, okay, it's done. It's done. Right? No more war. America, you really want to go to war and have a world war and possible nukes over a little bit of land that it's already done? Right? You know? No, I mean, that's the problem. I think Lithuania too. Now, again, traditional Republicans would have a big problem with Russia invading Lithuania. Democrats would have a big problem with Russia invading Lithuania. MAGA Republicans, all you have to do is buy Donald Trump a bank. Or not a bank, buy Donald Trump a hotel. Donald, here is your $1 billion hotel in Moscow. May I invade Lithuania? Yes. You know, all it takes. So yes, I'd be very concerned about that. Very concerned. So that's okay. Putin's not going after Alaska now. No. There'd be nuclear war if he went after Alaska. Yeah. It's biased, Danny. It's not bias. It's biased, ED. Thank you, Cracker, for the hearts. But now Putin's not going after Alaska. No chance. Zero chance of it. Again, guys, they're not even responding to us helping kill Russian soldiers in Ukraine. Thank you, Annie. They're not doing anything in response. You think they're going to have the balls to go after Alaska? Not going to happen. A separatist group growing in Kaliningrad, that would be wild. That would be just wild. Wow. I didn't know about that. Thank you, Annie, for the groundhog. That's interesting. Now, that's the kind of thing. Oh, and thank you, person with, did we say this was Japanese script, I think? Sending the hearts? I think it is. It's not kanji or whatever it's called, right? We had talked about this before. I think that's like that Japanese script, which I have no idea what it is, but thank you very much. Anyway, what else we got, guys? What else we got? Should NATO build a base in Ukraine? Probably. I mean, look, here's the thing. Thank you, Courtney, for the gift. In order to settle the war in Ukraine, a lot of stuff has to happen, right? One of the things that has to happen is if we're going to settle the war, oh, they have Japan in their bio. Oh, so it is Japanese. I never quite know, but I always assume that's the Japanese writing that I want to say is probably the phonetic Japanese writing. I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is, that writing. Because they have like maybe 3 alphabets in Japan, I think. Hey, Schwawe in Poland. There's a name. Thanks, Courtney. This is one of my Singapore shirts that I got in Singapore a couple weeks ago. Thank you, Vicky. But we were saying, oh yeah, Kaliningrad. It would be very interesting if the CIA or somebody, I would not put it past the CIA or the Brits to go and basically find like an opposition group in Kaliningrad, like a separatist group, to try to cause trouble in Kaliningrad. That would be wild. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if we did, you know? Oh, but yeah, so we were talking about NATO bases in Ukraine. Thank you, Flower Lady, for the beret. That's funny. About NATO bases in Ukraine. And the problem is, I do not see a way of settling the war in Ukraine that stops Russia from coming back in 5 years and starting the war again, right? Let's pretend the most drastic scenario. Ukraine says, we give up, oh my God, keep everything, right? So Russia keeps Crimea, Russia keeps all the land in the east. Everything Russia's stolen from Ukraine, 18% of Ukraine. The Ukrainians say, keep it. Now, they never would, right? But let's pretend the Ukrainians do. Thank you, Vicky. They give Russia everything it wants. Maybe they even say, oh, and Zelensky will leave office and we'll have a pro-Russian guy take over. In 5 to 10 years, the Russians will invade again and try to take the rest of Ukraine because Putin's goal in going into Ukraine wasn't to get rid of Zelensky. Putin's goal in Ukraine wasn't to just take the east. Putin's goal in Ukraine was to take all of Ukraine. He doesn't believe that Ukraine is a real and independent country. The Russians believe that Ukraine is Russia, and it's like this artifice. It's this artificial construction that isn't real. That's why they invaded, that because they want it back. Because of the Soviet Union. Soviet Union was run by the Russians. Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. The Russians have the same feeling about the Baltic states. They're also pissed at the Baltic states because the Baltic states stand up to them. And they want them. They just want to take it. So the problem is, we stop the war right now. We give Russia everything that it took from Ukraine. Maybe we even get rid of Zelensky, right? Give Russia everything it wants. In 5 to 10 years, Russia's invading again anyway because they're going to get the rest of the land. That's why they invaded to start with. The only way you can stop that is by either Ukraine joining NATO so that an invasion of Ukraine next time is an invasion of NATO, or putting NATO bases, NATO troops all over Ukraine so that if the Russians try to enter or bomb, they're literally killing NATO troops. And by doing that, we all go to war. That is the only way to stop a future war in Ukraine. So the question becomes, for Europeans or Americans, if we really want to stop another war in the future, you better figure out security guarantees that are, and frankly, the only ironclad security guarantee is NATO membership. And even that's not ironclad because, again, is Donald Trump going to defend any NATO allies? Doubtful. Certainly not against Russia. He supports Russia. So that's a problem. But at least being a NATO member means the Brits will come to your, even if Americans won't, the Brits will come to your aid, right? And Russia doesn't want that either. Russia doesn't want to have to fight the Poles or the Norwegians or lots of other European allies. So, but it's a mess. But that's a question too, Renzo, about whether Ukraine can even join NATO while the war is going on. Because typically you don't want countries joining NATO that have hot borders, right? Border disputes, because then we're literally welcoming a country into NATO that we're welcoming a war. So we don't want that. Having said that, there is a precedent with West Germany and East Germany. You know, the Russians had invaded and the Soviets and taken part of Germany. They made it an independent communist dictatorship, brutal, horrific dictatorship, killed their own people. And the West Germany, so the Russians cut the country in two, actually thirds. They grabbed a third and the West Germany was 2/3 remaining. They were allowed to join NATO. You know, so they were able to join even though the border wasn't set, right? So, you know, who knows? Who knows? I don't know the vision for the end of the war. I really don't know, Dave. I mean, my vision for the end of the war would have been kick Russia out, give Ukraine the weapons it needed at the beginning to beat the Russians and kick them out. And then, then you need Ukraine to join NATO. But if that's not going to happen, you arm the Ukrainians to the teeth with as many missiles and bombs as they need, so that if the Russians invade again, it's World War III with Ukraine. You don't give them nuclear weapons, but you give them cruise missiles, you give them everything. So that if the Russians touch them, the Ukrainians can just blow the crap out of any city, including Moscow. That might stop the Russians from invading again, short of a NATO commitment, but it would worry me. But at the very least, now I don't know how you end the war, because I think Biden screwed up. Biden wanted a tie. He got a tie. Well, I'm not sure how you pull out of a tie, because now I feel like the war is going to go on forever, because not just Biden, the Germans and the French were the reason for this too. They didn't want Ukraine to win. Well, cool. Ukraine didn't receive the weapons because the Germans, the French, and the Americans, Biden, were afraid of angering Vladimir Putin. And frankly, Biden said so repeatedly. Putin's got nuclear weapons. We can't afford to go to war with Russia. If you go to war with a nuclear country, it's World War III. I'm paraphrasing Biden, but he said this multiple times, and then his aide said it multiple times. Biden was terrified that any conflict between America and Russia would lead to nuclear war and we'd all die. Well, if that's the case, I'm refining this now. That was his concern. So Biden's response was to say, we must do everything to avoid conflict with Russia, including appeasing Russia. You could reach the conclusion that any war with Russia would be the end of the world. And your response to that could be, okay, thank you, crazy American. I need to build up as many weapons as possible so Russia never even thinks of going to war with me. That could have been one approach, right? We could just say, we're going to build ourselves up and tell the Russians, don't you dare come after us because we'll kill you, right? That could be the U.S. policy from Biden. That's not what he did. Biden was afraid of Putin. Biden said, literally, we can't have war with Putin, so I'm going to appease him. I'm going to give him stuff. I'm going to make sure we don't give Ukraine everything it needs because Russia may get angry. Not to mention, Putin gets angry. Who cares if he gets angry, right? Like, they're angry now. Right? The foreign minister or the deputy foreign minister, the ambassador, the foreign ministry came out and put statements out today. Oh, America better watch out. Who cares? They're angry. Thank you, Taurus. I don't get it. I really don't get it. If Ukraine still had their nukes, Russia would act differently. Oh, yeah. And Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons after the Cold War, after 1991. We convinced the Ukrainians to give up their nuclear weapons with a security guarantee from the Russians, the Americans, and the Brits, and I think the French too. And guess what? We didn't guarantee their security. And the Russians certainly didn't. They should not have given up their nukes. They should absolutely not have given up. It was 1994, I think, Martin, actually. Pretty sure it was 94 was the Budapest Memorandum, if that's what you're referring to. So, it was a big mistake from Bill Clinton. It was. But again, we tried to trust the Russians. We thought maybe in the 1990s, the Russians wanted to join the civilized world. They didn't, they didn't want to develop. They didn't want to join Europe. They didn't want to be civilized. They didn't want to be a modern nation state. They wanted to keep being a backwards country that 25% of the people don't even have, toilets. Okay. Well, oh well, what do you do? Yeah, exactly. They promised Renzo. They promised to never invade Ukraine if Ukraine gave back the nukes. And what did they do? 20 years later, they invaded. They invaded in 2014, right? And then invaded again, William, I did not touch on this today. No, the Russian offensive. There's like several Russian offensives going on, really. I will grab the little map here. But you've got the Russians fighting all along the front in general. Sorry, my map is getting wrinkled. I just like the face of Bo or the other woman. I always say this from a Doctor Who. The woman whose face was stretched. I need to stretch the face. Not the face of Bo was the other one. That woman in the satellite. Remember the satellite thing where she got the face stretched? You've got fighting from Zaporizhia all around here, going up here, Kupiansk, etc. the battles going on right now that have had a Cassandra, there you go. Thanks, Mark. The battle that has people more concerned right now has been around Kharkiv. The Russians came across the border trying to take some towns, and whether they're trying to create a buffer, whether they're trying to get some land to push the Ukrainians back a little so the Ukrainians have a harder time attacking Belgorod, the Russian city over here, whether it is to distract the Ukrainians. And it's been effective. Worry the Ukrainians because Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, is right here, 1.5 million people, like 20 miles from the border, 30 kilometers from the border. The Russians were able to convince the Ukrainians to move troops up here from the rest of the fighting. So now the Ukrainians have fewer troops fighting the Russians here because they had to defend themselves here. So that's what Russia was doing. All the analysis is that the Russians are not going to make any big, sort of huge strategic victory. They may be getting some towns. Some of the towns are helping them, but there isn't going to be a huge strategic victory. They're not going to get a ton of land. They're not going to get Kharkiv. So that is the thinking right now from all the defense experts about what's going on. But because the Russians have got tons of artillery and the Ukrainians don't, because the Americans the MAGA Republicans cut off Ukraine 6-7 months ago, and for 6 months they weren't getting any American aid, that helped the Russians. Because the Americans and Europeans overall, Brits have honestly said two different things. The Brits look like they're okay now. Have said that we will not let the Ukrainians use our weapons to fire into Russia. That has also helped the Russians. Because like in Belgorod, near Kharkiv, the Russians are across the border, right? The Russians that have crossed the border here, their supply lines go into Ukraine, right? And the supply lines are literally how they get more ammunition, more fuel. Their tanks need fuel. Their trucks need fuel. Their infantrymen need bullets. I mean, their tanks need, or artillery needs shells. You've got to have a supply line. Well, in order to hit that supply line, Ukraine needs weapons to fire into Russia. Ukraine can't use any of its weapons that it got from the U.S. or most European countries to fire into Russia. They can't use their artillery they got from us, all their artillery pieces. They can't use missiles. They can't use anything. So, what do you do? What do you do? It's like literally about 18, 20 miles, I think, from the border. It's right there. So, well, I mean, that's a tough question, Ken. Ken is asking, when can Ukraine expect the current aid package to actually help them? Thank you, Larissa. I mean, the new aid package started arriving almost immediately, within a couple days. More and more is coming. A lot of it won't come till the summer. Some of it won't come until Christmas, they were saying, until the end of the year. What I was also reading was, it's not clear that any of the new weapons are going to do anything other than stop the Russians. It's not going to help the Ukrainians get their land back, because we're going to have another big buildup, counteroffensive, and in that case, we probably need, we need to give the Ukrainians planes. Thank you, Mark. From your mouth to their ears, I guess. F-16s, well, okay, two things. F-16s are supposed to arrive this summer. Typically, people have been assuming that means August. Now, that would be the beginning of the F-16s. That doesn't mean all of them, right? They would arrive over the months. There is some chatter that F-16s may have already arrived in Ukraine. Who knows? It's just like gossip among military people. But there's been some suspicion. I'm trying to remember. There was some attack. There was something maybe a month ago or 6 weeks ago that I think was the first time that, people were going, that was a weird thing that happened. Could those have been F-16s? But who knows? I mean, I would hope the F-16s are already there and they're being used secretly somehow. I don't know. That'd be nice, and we haven't told anybody, but but at least officially, yeah, Terry's saying next month, that'd be June. That would be pretty good. Lots of support in your neck of the woods. Where are you, Blue Sky? Just curious. Well, that's the question. Yeah. Like whether Ukraine's, already got some of them. I think because it's really hard. No, Scott Kid asks, what's stopping Ukraine from reverse engineering our F-16s or other weapon systems? I think because they're really hard to build. Same thing with the Russians to some degree. The Russians have to get their hands on it, but they're not easy to build. Like it takes a lot of technical know-how to do it. But I don't know anybody here who's got more of an engineering. I mean, Best Worst Gamers is often with us. He was literally a military engineer. But any engineers know, like, is it that hard for Ukraine if they've got an F-16 to like reverse engineer it? I'm going to assume very hard. F-16s are very good. I mean, the question becomes, Mark Body's saying takes years. Thank you, Chad. That F-16, that it could take years to reverse engineer it. What were we saying? What was the other? Hang on, I'm looking here to see what else. Massively expensive, tons of parts needed. Yeah, I mean, actually, that's true too. Every part would have to be designed and made. They would need manufacturers for all the different components. That's one country doing that would be very hard. Just doing the engines would be difficult. Thank you, Soldier, for the hearts. Yeah, any case, so very difficult. Very difficult. Yeah. But in terms of the importance of the F-16s, again, the military folks will tell you they could have a big impact. There's a lot of detail. Like Callum often fills us in on this. He was visiting me in D.C. actually right before the show. So Callum is running around this evening, so he cannot join us. Denon says it's impossible. Okay. But for the F-16s, one of the things that's really useful is they communicate and cooperate with a lot of the weapons we've already given Ukraine. The weapons that had to be jerry-rigged to go on Ukrainian MiG fighter jets work much better when they're on F-16s. Again, very complicated, all the stuff you can do, but they just work a hell of a lot better. So that's one thing right there. That's a big deal with the F-16s. I also believe you're going to have, my guess is, but remind me folks, probably much better targeting computers, much better distance, accuracy, all that kind of stuff, I'm assuming, with the F-16s. But I know there's all sorts of different modules or whatever, or modes that Callum was saying about how you set them to fire and like to be on the lookout to fire and all this kind of system, things you do with the firing system that you can do with them. Oh, the missiles. Actually, good question here, guys. Will the F-16s have weapons that we have not already jerry-rigged the Ukrainians to use with their MiGs? That's an interesting question. Now, we know the weapons will work better with the F-16s, but are there any missiles, for example, that we could not figure out how the Ukrainians could use it on their MiGs, but they will get those missiles with an F-16 or a bomb? I don't know if that's what you meant, but that's a good question. Anybody? Callum's in some bar. Yeah. Just curious if anybody knows. Oh, excuse me, guys. Oh, now I'm yawning. Ugh. My dog woke me up a little early this morning. But I was wondering just that, are there weapon systems on the F-16 that we have not been able to jerry-rig for Ukrainian MiGs so that when they get an F-16, they'll actually get a better weapon system as well? In a system that they could not use on a air-to-air missiles, but are they missiles we've not been able to affix to the MiGs? Because I know some of the British missiles, I believe, right? They've been able to jerry-rig to work. Well, sure. Of course, the British, the Storm Shadows, right? We know they're on Russian, I believe on Ukrainian MiGs, right? AMRAAMs, but are AMRAAMs not, I guess because they require the actual radar system in the plane probably, right? Just curious. Anybody who knows here? Beep, beep, beep. Oh, I'm going to yawn at you guys again. Sorry. Oh, tired. I'm tired. I'm going to throw a pizza on after the show. After I take my Singapore shirt on so I don't get pizza sauce on it, because I'm sure that's what will happen next. The MiGs aren't even that bad. They just have very few. Oh, that's interesting, Martin. I didn't know that. Huh. Interesting. I don't know why you're talking about Stormy right now, but Trump doesn't seem to have a lot of money on hand, so Also, Trump lies about how much money he has anyway. So, why did Trump have to mortgage his house to pay the porn star that he cheated on his wife, who just had a baby with, and pay her hush money? Because Trump lies and doesn't have the kind of money he says he has. That would be that Occam's razor would say Trump lies and didn't have the money. That would be the simplest answer, right? That's a good. So McCurran asks and says, why won't the Swedes give, or when will the Swedes give the Ukrainians the Gripen fighter jets? Good question. A couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, the Swedish prime minister, I think, said, oh, we're still considering it. And it was like, really, you've been considering this for 2 years now? Like, give me a break. You're not considering it at all. Well, but that's a really good question. I mean, if the Americans provide F-16s, the Swedes should provide Gripen fighter jets to the Ukrainians. Yes. F-35s, yeah, I'm sure. Excuse me. Mushroom chicken. Yeah, so we know the Germans have not, right, the Germans are still refusing to give the cruise missiles to Ukraine. Yep. Thank you, Danan. Well, that's a good question, too. Actually, that's a wonderful question. David Weir just asked on TikTok and said, okay, why does Putin cry when he's attacked by weapons from NATO? Like, why is he getting so upset that we're giving weapons to Ukraine, but he can use weapons from China and Korea? Well, exactly. Now, he's upset because our weapons are killing his troops, of course. But, exactly. Gripens are good, can fly off highways. That's interesting. Oh, Turkey being salty about not getting F-35s? Well, too bad. The problem is we don't need anything from Turkey. I mean, the problem for Turkey is, No, actually, it's always possible. We could have promised Turkey F-35. Maybe we promised them anyway. We could have promised them and not gone public about it because we don't want to, you don't want to prove the extortion publicly, But that's interesting. The Turks want F-35s instead of F-16s. Well, too bad. Now, the Greeks are getting F-35s, aren't they? I believe they are. I'm sure the Turks aren't happy about that. But you know what? Maybe be a better ally, Turkey. Be a better NATO ally, and the U.S. will help you out. But act like a little shit, which Turkey's been doing for a while now. Oh, well, you don't get the weapons the Greeks get. Sorry. Be a better friend. No, he's a terrible friend. I mean, Erdogan, who's the Turkish prime minister, he's terrible. Or president. He shat on us over Sweden and Finland joining NATO. Both countries, really. I'm not sure what you mean, Max Trex. I'm trying to understand what you wrote. Russian land makes Russia. Oh, yes, except that Russian troops aren't, like, the weapons from the Chinese and everybody aren't killing Americans, whereas the weapons from us are killing Russians. So, there's a little bit of a difference in the argument, right? It's a little closer to home for the Russians. Thank you, Olson, for the hearts. Right? And the A-10s, we've talked about the A-10s before. About, why they're not sending A-10s. And yeah, Northeast, I'm not going to call you Northeast. Ni on YouTube is saying the Greeks are getting the F-35s and newer Leopard 2s. Okay. Turkey just bought the Russian S-400s. No way they're getting the newest fighter jets. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Running, for the gifts. Now, wait, do you mean, I know about the Turks buying the S-400s because we weren't happy about that, the Russian anti-air systems, but I didn't remember. Is that part of the reason we're not giving them F-35s? Turkey's building their own jet? I don't know. Urepon, thank you for the rose, and Danan as well, and Tom, I think I thanked you, and Running. Biden or Trump? I'd like the guy who didn't try to violently overthrow our government and doesn't embrace America's enemies and hate our democracy and hate our country and everything it stands for. Oh, and didn't sleep with a porn star right after his wife gave birth and then pay her $130,000 to shut up. But that's just me. I'm funny that way. So, thank you, Super Hornet and Skakid. But if we retire the A-10s, we could have just given them to Ukraine. Now, the A-10s require, I think, F-16s to keep them safe because they're slow and everything, and they can be picked off. So you'd have to have a whole, I don't know to what degree. I forget, we've talked about this before, but I don't remember what we concluded. Like whether it would just be too hard for the Ukrainians to actually operate the A-10s and keep them safe, and the F-16s and like the whole sort of combined arms aspect of it would be too difficult. I don't know. And 51, I don't know if Ukraine will win. And I've said this before because I don't think we want Ukraine to win. Biden doesn't want Ukraine to win. We are intentionally not giving Ukraine, we are still not giving Ukraine weapon systems it needs because we don't want Ukraine to win. The Germans aren't. I mean, I don't think Ukraine's going to win unless we want them to win. And unfortunately, it's getting a little late. So that's the problem. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Biden doesn't have any bank accounts. Trump does, on the other hand. Trump's own children have received $2 billion from Saudi Arabia. Trump's daughter received trademark from China right after he became president. Biden does not. Biden's kid literally worked for a company in Ukraine. That was it. And you guys, you MAGA people get upset about that. Donald Trump's kids took $2 billion with a B from the Saudi Arabia, and you're like, it's okay. It's okay. But Biden's kid was on a board of directors of a company in an obscure country. Oh my God. Give me a break. Also, Trump did try to violently overthrow the government. There's that little difference as well. Oh, don't even worry about that. And the sleeping with the porn star and his wife, which I'm sorry, it still makes me sick on so many levels. The main purpose of the war in Ukraine is to stop Russia from taking all of Ukraine and being emboldened so that he then decides to go after NATO. The Poles, the Baltic states, also Moldova, not NATO, but concerned there. Secondary reason is, we're trying to stop a country from getting wiped out. The Russians commit sort of war crimes nonstop. Thank you, Marilyn. So there is an altruistic reason as well, but it's number two to national security reasons. So will the French send troops to Ukraine? He's sure talking about it. The French, the Czech government has talked about it. The Polish government has talked about it. And who was it who just said something the other day? It was a fourth government. French, Czech, Poland. Who was it, guys? Somebody else just met. Estonia? Was it Estonia? It was just in the last week or two, right? Was it Estonia? I mean, I'm not surprised it would be Estonians. The Baltic, I'm surprised the Baltic states haven't already said, we're coming, but maybe it was. Was it? Okay. But so I wouldn't be surprised if the French get to the point that they send troops, But I think the French are currently trying to get NATO talking about it to build support within NATO. They're kind of putting out trial balloons almost, right? In terms of, I don't know that the French would send them if other countries didn't send them. And the French have said so far they wouldn't send troops unless A, the Ukrainians asked for them, and B, it was like a crisis. Like the Russians are about to take the Ukrainian capital or something, right? Or Odessa in the south. Or Kharkiv, I would put that as well. Then France said it might send troops. They might. This is also, the danger becomes this war becomes more dangerous the better Russia does. Russia starts to take all of Ukraine, and now you got a problem because now Russia's on the border with Poland. Now Russia's on the border with Hungary, Slovakia, Romania. This starts to get much scarier. Now you all of a sudden start to see those NATO countries build up their forces on the border. There's a greater, it's Slovenia. It's not Slovenia, it's Slovakia. No, that's Slovakia, not Slovenia. Unless you're talking to somebody else, Deb. If they send troops as volunteers, yeah, but there already are volunteers. There's French volunteers in Ukraine. There's American volunteers in Ukraine, Well, actually, Mr. California, Trump and Biden and Republicans and Democrats all wanted to ban TikTok. Funny story here. You can Google it. Trump changed his mind on banning TikTok when a billionaire who invested in TikTok met with Trump. The billionaire invests in the parent company of TikTok called ByteDance. And the billionaire had a private meeting with Trump. And Trump suddenly changed his mind a few months ago when the billionaire who is in cahoots with TikTok sat down with him, and suddenly Trump changed his mind. So don't give me this Biden wants to ban TikTok and Trump doesn't. Give me a break. Trump literally was going to ban TikTok until it looks like he got a payoff in some way, whether the billionaire promised money to, the political PACs, the political action committee, stuff like that. So give me a break. And by the way, Republicans were the ones by the way, the TikTok ban happened because of Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives. Biden supports it, but Trump supported it too. It was Republicans in the House of Representatives that came up with the TikTok ban. So again, let's not play politics with which party is pro-TikTok and which is against. Everybody is against TikTok other than Donald Trump, and that's because some billionaire met with him privately and did something. So, yeah, Trump wouldn't do that. Trump wouldn't meet with somebody behind closed doors who was rich and take a payoff. Oh my God. Trump only makes decisions based on his firmly held religious beliefs. Yeah, they're going to debate each other. It'll be interesting. I mean, Biden debating is scary, but Trump debating is going to be awful because he's just a loudmouth, and Trump's gotten much worse. Like if you see Trump now versus 4 or 8 years ago, he's not as, Saturday thing is 11 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday. Just a reminder, tomorrow morning, we've got our weekly hangout with the paid monthly subscribers on TikTok and YouTube. That's everybody who's got SNN next to your name on TikTok, all the green people on YouTube. I will be on both of these services and Discord as well. We'll be beaming in live 11 a.m. Eastern time U.S. That's Washington, D.C. or New York City time. So why am I on TikTok? Trying to stop a genocide? Deep, 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 deep. Oh, I'm sure. Trust me, Owen, the Ukrainian company absolutely hired Biden's son because he was Biden's son. Of course, it's the same reason Donald Trump's children go around the world and make lots of money. Okay? Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, got $2 billion from the Saudi Arabians. He didn't get it because he's a charismatic guy. He got it because he's married to Donald Trump's daughter. So all of these children are grifters. Absolutely. Biden's child is a grifter. Trump's children and son-in-law are grifters. Absolutely. But again, if Biden is corrupt because his son got hired by a Ukrainian company to be on their board of directors and made a couple million, then Trump is really corrupt if the Saudis gave his son-in-law $2 billion and countries around the world have been giving millions to the Trump children. Not to mention, actually, countries around the world gave millions of dollars to Donald Trump himself. You guys know this. Donald Trump owned a hotel in Washington that he bought, and he basically made foreign diplomats stay at his hotel. They did the same thing down in Florida at Mar-a-Lago. It was known in diplomatic circles that you had to stay at Donald Trump's hotel. So quite literally, when any of your diplomatic delegations were visiting Washington or Florida, you had to give money to Donald Trump. Okay? Corrupt as hell, unbelievably corrupt, something that we would have never stood for if it was a Democrat or a Republican. Trump did it, and it became, oh, well, he's literally getting money paid to him by the Japanese premier, and by, the Japanese premier stayed at Mar-a-Lago, paid Trump money. They didn't stay for free. Trump charges them. When Trump had a summit with the Japanese, he made them come to his resort in Mar-a-Lago. He made the Japanese pay for it. He then made the Secret Service pay for it. The Secret Service had to pay to stay at Donald Trump's resort in Mar-a-Lago to protect Donald Trump when he was president. They had to pay. He's not stupid. He didn't stay at the Hilton because the Hilton would have gotten the money. Trump literally funneled U.S. government money to his own pocketbook. Again, anybody had done this previously, Republican or Democrat, they would have been skewered. Trump did it because he's corrupt as hell. So anyway, all right, guys, I'm going to call it quits. We've been going for an hour and 20. I'm going to skip the recap again just because I get tired at this point. I'm hungry and tired. I want to change shirts and go put on some pizza. So, Yeah, no, Biden's son is a grifter. But Trump's kids are grifters times 1,000, and there's no proof that Biden did anything. That's the other thing. You guys have zero. There's literally, the Republicans have admitted they've got zero proof that Biden did anything on behalf of his son. He got paid by the Ukrainians. Zero. But, you know, you guys have to be partisan. You have to go after Biden because he's a Democrat, so whatever. I did have a good time in Bali. I kind of miss Bali now. I kind of wish I'd spent more time there. So what do you do, you know? Anyway, thank you, Smile Pandemic. Appreciate that. All right, guys, I will see some of you tomorrow. Thank you, Jeremy and Claire. I will see some of you tomorrow. I am not going to wear the pizza. The shirt is getting changed because, you know, if I make pizza, this pizza is going all over the shirt. It's a guarantee. No. Shirt's coming off. I'm wearing my black t-shirt. I will be safe for pizza. But I will see some of you tomorrow. I've got like I said, my live tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Time U.S. on TikTok and YouTube and Discord. And that will be for the paid monthly subscribers. So join us, guys. And the rest of you, I will be back Monday. And join me Monday. Otherwise, have a good day, everybody. Glad you joined us. And thank you, moderators. And thank you for the gifts. You guys were particularly generous today. I very much appreciate that. I will actually, when I finish the show, I will go. Thank you, Florian, for the heart. I will go and grab, like I said, TikTok grabs like the top 3 gifts and grabs the little video of it coming up. So I'll put those up right now to thank you guys on TikTok. So thank you for that. Otherwise, the show's an hour and a half, so I can't go find the other. I literally have to go through an hour and a half. It's impossible. But at least TikTok grabs those, which is kind of cool. All right, guys, have a good night. Thank you all, and I will see some of you tomorrow and the rest of you on Monday. All right? All right, see you guys.